Hello, everyone, and welcome. Apologies about the delay getting into our Zoom room. We were having a few little technical difficulties, but we are ready to start now. And I just want to introduce myself. My name's Karen Hubert. I'm the director of the MA in Writing program, and I'd like to welcome you to our thesis reading this evening. I'd like to begin our evening by thanking all of the parents, partners, siblings, friends, babysitters, and coworkers of our students who are here tonight because they recognize the value of this writing work. I'd like to thank, on behalf of our students, each of these friends and family members who maybe helped with tuition, unloaded the dishwasher, or put the kids to bed when it technically wasn't their turn, who read a novel chapter or an essay or the same article for the gazillionth time and gave feedback, for supporting these students in ways large and small. I'd also like to thank our faculty, so many of whom have joined us tonight, for sharing their considerable expertise with students and giving so generously of their time. I know that this is time that always comes at the expense of their own writing because they care deeply about their students. The time's a gift graciously given, but I know it is not without sacrifice, so thank you to our faculty. Finally, I'd like to thank our alumni for joining us today. Our alumni are part of our vibrant literary community in cities all across the country, and I'd urge our students to connect with them as they are the ones that are out there hosting reading series, networking events, monthly write-ins, as well as editing literary journals, volunteering as writers in the schools, and participating in writing groups that endure long after their time in our program ends. Thank you for giving back to the community and keeping the literary flame alive. This fall, we have 36 students graduating, with 23 of them reading their theses here tonight via Zoom, and 13 more reading live on the Johns Hopkins campus in Baltimore tomorrow night. For those of us in the MA in Writing program, the thesis readings are a celebratory time. They're kind of our equivalent to graduation. And in that spirit, to celebrate their dexterity, their learning, and their prose, we have each graduating student read a 5-minute excerpt of their thesis. For those in the audience, you are in for a treat. And we will start our evening off with Kim Bernhuber reading fiction. Kim?
Hello, my name's Kim Bernhuber. I'm honored to be starting us off tonight. To get this started, I'll be reading a relatively light scene with some action from my speculative Afro noir novel, and this is where we begin. The protagonist, Rafisk, is a griot, which is this world's version of a TV reporter. He's with his indentured servant Flufunk, the inappropriate, his manservant and producer. They've been assigned to investigate a ship that's drifted into harbor, and all its crew are missing. Suddenly, they hear noises in the galley. My eyes narrowed against the glare, searching the dark for movement. I could only imagine what was making that noise. The click and scrape of claws on wood, the wet slap of tongues tasting air. Before I'd ever seen one, I'd assumed the name was a misnomer, like how the flying lemur isn't really a lemur and also can't really fly. It turns out the grinning ape mouth really does have 8 mouths, and the grin, oh, who could know what thoughts moved behind those 16 eyes, the calculations, the hunger. Of course, I'd never seen one in person, only in a luminosphere, 100 miles away in someone else's story. Griots gathered facts at a terrible cost. The ape mouth could pick locks, it could throw its voice, it knew what a tolling funeral bell meant, it rang for dinner. So when it was padding towards you, smiling, you'd know it wasn't just prey drive, stalk, chase, kill. It was something else, all frontal lobe, something that wanted you mounted on the mantle, like it had been looking forward to that moment, cleared its schedule for you. I ducked away from the porthole. The door was thick and steel and locked, but still. A grinning ape mouth, I said. Keep her, protect us. Flufunk the inappropriate made the sign of the 5 points. I rooted in my satchel 3 dozen wonders from 3 dozen places most men never find. A swallow's stone to quiet thirst, a glass that showed what was better left unseen, a razor, something wet. I pulled my hand out. Blood. I really should have sewn some pockets into that thing. I removed a small leather wineskin no bigger than a fist. Leithweed, it'll cold cock a rhino. Need to squirt the stuff near its mouth, I said. I paused. Mouths. How's this? I pointed into the middle distance. Right there, just a few feet away, stands one of the deadliest animals in the archipelago. I paused. Animals or creatures? Creatures. Mr. Rafis, you don't have to go in there. Of course, him saying I didn't have to go in there made it impossible for me not to go in there. Would he have guessed that? Was he trying to goad me into it? If I died, his indenture would be passed on to the state. Was working for me hard enough to be worth a roll of the bones? It didn't occur to me until later that maybe he genuinely didn't want me to go in. This is the job, I said. I need the shot. One take, in and out. One take, boss? You think I can't do it in one take? There's always a first, boss. Wait till you see it. Don't turn your back. Just get the shot. I slid the door open. Inside, copper pots swayed on their hooks. The galley stove stood cold and dead. The pot was smeared with something that wasn't soot. The butcher's block looked like it had been chewed. The stench of iron and offal filled the small space. The animal strutted forth from behind a busboy station, dainty, precise, each hind foot placed exactly where the front had been, walking a line only it could see. A pot clattered to the floor, struck by one of the creature's sinuous necks. It smiled like it knew me. The grinning ape mouth was smaller than it had looked on the luminosphere. Take a house cat, jam 8 toothy snakes on its neck, dip it in dark chocolate, then tell it a joke. I'd heard it grinned because it smelled with its teeth. At that moment, it would have only smelled fear and some urine. The beast watched me, placid, patient. Is that the look it gave the ship's captain before it struck? Thinking not about the kill, but how to make it last, how to slide a single fang between the vertebrae, how to feed slowly while he lay helpless. How long would it take to eat 30 men, 8 at a time? I held out the wineskin. The animal knew I held no spear, no sword. It grinned wider. I removed the stopper. Nostrils flared. Was it purring? I aimed without looking away. Squeezed. It's well known that the average human face can express 7 basic emotions. A griot, a true master storyteller, can display 21. 10,000 hours in front of the mirror, learning every muscle, every twitch, every furrow, the eye tilt, the giving of the eyebrows, the nuances of the in-between, hateful disgust, surprising anger, fearful awe. When the wineskin only produced a puff of air, I showed off my range. Rueful surprise, sad regret. I examined the dripping wineskin, nodded when I found the razor slice. I should really have sewed some pockets into that thing. Distilled leithweed worked well and acted quick. I dropped. My knees struck the planks with a hollow thud. Thank you.
I'm reading from the final pages of one of my thesis's short fiction pieces, which captures the narrator's previously unspoken realization of what a lifetime of playing tennis truly meant to him and his father. Later, I looked toward my father, who was quietly watching, or maybe not watching. He sat still in the dappled light, straw hat low over his eyes, his hands resting lightly in his lap. He wasn't focused on the court exactly, more like listening, not to the players, but to the sound of tennis itself, the rhythmic thump of the ball, the scuff of sneakers, the hum of time passing. I looked at him and felt something shift inside. I realized what the game had meant all along. It had been a language we shared, a way of holding each other across the years. I had been trying to grow up. My father had been trying not to grow old. And between us, tennis had stood as both a bridge and a battlefield. Now it was over. I wanted to tell him that, to say it out loud, to thank him maybe, or just name it for what it was. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. Later that evening, I stood alone on the court with my racket. The sun had dropped behind the olive trees, casting long, slender shadows across the service boxes. I picked up a ball and bounced it a few times. The echo rang sharp against the fading sky. I turned slowly, looking at the corners of the court, the places where I had run, lunged, and fallen. I thought of my younger self, thought of the days when beating my father felt like everything, when each match was a test, a proving ground. I served once just to hear the sound. The ball hit the back of the fence cleanly, and the echo lingered. I retrieved it, bounced it again, and this time walked toward the baseline instead of staying behind it. There was a ghost in that walk. My father used to cross the court just like that, in between games, dragging the tip of his racket along the painted line. Not because he needed to, just a habit, a small mark of ownership, I realized, with a sharp ache, that I'd been doing the same thing years ago without even noticing. The light shifted, grew colder. Somewhere inside, my mother called that dinner was ready. I didn't move right away. I thought instead about all the matches we'd played, hundreds probably, and all of the times I'd lost. I remember how bitter it felt then, how unfair, how I gritted my teeth and stewed afterwards. And now, standing alone, I wish I could go back and play every single one of them again. Not to win, but to feel what I hadn't noticed at the time, that losing didn't matter. The game was never about the outcome. I could see it now. My father's subtle smiles, the glances across the net, the way he sometimes let a point go just to stretch the rally, the way he never gloated, never pushed too hard. He had been shaping something, holding something together. Tennis had been our dialogue, our ongoing question and answer, every serve, every volley, every challenge. I didn't need to win, not anymore. That final afternoon, the one when the game truly ended, had carved something permanent into me. I watched my father sit there in the shade, not commenting, not judging, just quietly present. And I realized that maybe the contest had always been his. My father hadn't needed to win. Maybe after that first match I had won back in high school, my father had known what was coming. Maybe he'd held on, not to stay on top, but to give us both more time in the ritual, a ritual of care disguised as competition. I wanted to speak then, wanted to walk up to my father and say, "You don't have to stay young for me," or, "I understand now, I really do." But the words felt heavy and somehow wrong, like trying to summarize a book that only could be read, not paraphrased. So instead, I did what felt right. I walked to the far corner of the court, retrieved the scattered balls, and rolled them gently into the hopper. Then I looped my racket under one arm and began walking slowly back toward the house, where the windows glowed warm against the dusk. In the kitchen, my mother was already setting plates. Hannah poured wine. The smell of rosemary chicken filled the room. My father was waiting just inside the driveway entry to the house and stepped back to let me in. He patted my shoulder and gently helped me take the racket off my arm and hung it up on the peg near the door. Not because the game was over forever, but because finally it no longer had to carry everything between us. I'd found the meaning between the lines, and that was enough. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jamie Miller, and I'll be reading Donuts, the first chapter from my memoir, The Honor Trip Across Country Trek Through Grief. Donuts. Blum's donuts. That's exactly what he needed. Dad was moved to the ICU last night and wasn't eating, but he would never turn down a Blum's donut. When I was growing up, we would stop at the small family-owned donut shop on the way to daycare. The sun wasn't up yet. Never was at that hour. Always being the first one to arrive was difficult for a little kid, but riding silently across town in the royal blue family station wagon, sitting next to him, made it okay. Mornings with Dad. And donuts. He would get an old-fashioned and an apple fritter, and I would get a blueberry glazed or a fancy with rainbow sprinkles, the glaze made from scratch, completing the perfect marriage of cake and sugary cream, little shards collecting like jewels at the bottom of the paper bag. The small dated building had formica countertops and a glass pastry case taller than my 7-year-old self. Inside smelled like magic. Everything was always fresh. The cake part was moist and spongy and never stale. Dad would get a coffee and I a milk. He would order our treats and we would trudge back to the wagon. I was allowed to hold his coffee while we floated through the cerulean darkness of morning, the mug warming my hands, convincing me I was awarded some extraordinary privilege. Mom and Dad used to run a donut shop in Chicago, and I think that's what drove him to continue going back to Blum's. Nothing beats a from scratch, right out of the fryer donut made in the fresh in the hushed secrecy of the very last and very first hours of each day. While the world sleeps, donuts are made. Something about that level of hard work and dedication to such a deceptively simple craft makes it better, and something about those happy memories of a more uncomplicated time seemed to calm his spirit. So that's what he needed, I decided. Blum's Donuts. Pull over, I yelled at my husband as we blew past the tiny building. Walking in, the same friendly face greeted me. I can't be certain she ever knew me, but Dad swore she always remembered him. Standing in front of that same glass pastry case, I ordered a blueberry glazed, apple fritter, an old fashioned, an orange juice, apple juice, and a coffee. I had matured past milk. My dad's in the hospital and he says your donuts are the best, so I'm hoping they make him feel better, I said to the familiar face behind the counter. It just slipped out. I wanted so desperately to put the words back in, embarrassed at myself for telling a stranger my painful realities. Well, I hope he feels better very soon. Some extra donut holes, she said, slipping them into the bag. We always did get a few extra donut holes, something that to me says friend, but in actuality probably just means leftovers. I was confident these treats would cure Dad's soul and heal his lack of appetite. They would bring back his spirit and give the doctors time to figure out this cancer business for the third occasion. This time I walked back to my husband's truck, not the family station wagon, with treasures in hand and very proud of my idea. Dad had always fixed me, and I was happy to be able to fix him, even if it was just with fried pastries. I have Blum's Donuts, I proudly announced, swinging around the corner of the door and into Dad's hospital room. The moment I saw him, my stomach hit the floor. While I can remember the smell of the donuts, candied and magical and somehow filling my heart with hope, I cannot remember his exact words. End it. No more. I'm done. I'm not sure of the precise wording, but it doesn't matter. It was over. He was ending all treatment, deeming himself unfixable by donuts, doctors, or drugs. Over the next 2 days, I watched as the light that so brightly illuminated my life was snuffed out. The tears from hours of crying had dried, leaving a salty residue on my swollen eyes and cheeks. I steadied myself on the hospital bedside bars as I leaned over my dad, willing him to just open his eyes. I gingerly brushed the hair across his forehead. I'd never touched him in such a way. We had cuddled when I was a child, held hands, hugged. I'd occasionally helped him to the car or put on his shoes when the cancer broke his bones, but I'd never touched him so tenderly, and he wasn't even conscious enough to know. His eyes didn't open. He didn't move except for the slow and unsteady breathing, the uncomfortably deep breaths I counted the moments between, the absence of breath that I tried to match, thinking if I could just take his last breath with him. But I gasped for air when I couldn't hold mine any longer. The lapse in breath drew me in closer to see if he was still there. The closer I got, the louder the silence, the faster my heart beat. It's okay. You can go, I whispered in his ear. If not, I'll see you in the morning. I love you. I leaned over, attempting to hug him. A violent gasp erupted from his previously peacefully breathing lungs. It was raspy and wet, choking, and panicked. I stared, startled, yet hopeful, but still, he did not open his eyes. Dad's breathing immediately returned to its slow, deep rhythm. I'd convinced myself it was not simply the rattle of death, but Dad saying, just stay 5 more minutes. I didn't stay, and once I left, so did he. My best friend was gone. Thank you.
My name is Ash Miller. I'm going to read an excerpt from my short story fiction piece called Dark Coffee. The autumn blew into town that year, but the air stayed warm, a hint of sweat lingering in the air. The leaves dried out but did not fall, turning a burnt brown in the trees. Some days felt downright hot, well into November. Afternoons had high blue skies, with children scootering beneath thick sycamores, and all could be mistaken for normal. But some of us noticed that the town gave off a faint new odor, a black licorice smell blowing in from the far distance, suggesting that we were now moving sideways, that the town had fallen into a new half-hour time zone of its own creation. The children began to miss music lessons, caught instead in spells of distraction, staring at root patterns in the lower yard. Music teachers spent lesson time looking out the window, half remembering that their pupils had failed to appear. Soon, the baked brown leaves fell sporadically, skittering across concrete driveways. Parents struggled to prepare dinner, scorching the garlic in aluminum pans, forgetting to add the oil, dropping cooked pasta into the sink. I thought the colander was there a minute ago. Soft noodles slithered in blobs as distracted cooks looked on in confusion. The only thing to be done was to wander into the next room and take books from college off the shelf, staring blankly at the musty pages. Open bottles of red wine stood unpoured on white marble countertops. Soon the coffee cart started making the rounds near the town square. A metal box on wheels with an umbrella. It was stacked with tidy bags of whole beans, pushed by a clean-cut young man with cat-eye glasses. Later, no one could describe what he'd been wearing. Was it a blue Oxford button-down? Pink? One resident swore it was a faded banana yellow shirt and a sky blue vest. It wasn't just him we became unsure of. Everyone's vision had gone cloudy. There was a fuzz of static around the edges of things. The trees on the town square grew indistinct, colors leaching away into the high white sky. The red brick of the storefronts faded into blue-gray, before one day losing color altogether. A filter of dim nostalgia and dread descended over the world instead of snow, which never fell that winter. It remained warm, even hot on some days, as the earth turned round the sun, the hemisphere tilted on an angle away from that ball of burning gas, even as a chill should have filled the air. We began to notice changes. The heat absorbed into the buildings and sidewalks, warming the cars and trees alike. Some of us, as responsible, mature adults and parents in the community, feared the heat was responsible for draining the color from the town, only to catch ourselves wondering, how was that possible? There were still laws of physics, were there not? Were the colors exhausted, worn out by the agitation of molecules, losing their nature into the open air? Abstracted parents happened upon the coffee cart and realized that this was the solution. A strong, unadulterated dose of caffeine was what we needed. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Danielle Lewis, and I'm going to be reading the first excerpt from my novella entitled Silhouettes, which is going to be a part of a horror anthology. The rain drummed against the pavement, each drop exploding into a tiny crown of water. Through the haze, a figure darted across the empty street, shoulders hunched, one hand clutching a hood against the wind. The automatic doors of Walgreens slid open with a hiss. Inside, fluorescent lights caught the droplets sliding from dark fabric as fingers pushed back the hood, releasing a cascade of brown hair that clung to her neck, darker at the roots where the water had seeped through. Kelsey Donovan's sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as she made a beeline for aisle 7. Her right hand hovered at chest level, palm down, revealing a raw, reddened curve. Blood beaded along the edge. She winced as her fingers brushed a blue box of saline wash, flipping it over with her good hand. Sodium chloride 0.9%, she murmured, the words triggering a flash of her mother's cool fingers smoothing Band-Aids over her skin knees, the sting of Bactine, the smell of her father's aftershave as he kissed the top of her head. The fluorescent bulb above flickered once, twice. She blinked hard and moved down the shelf. Can I help you find something, ma'am? The box slipped an inch through Kelsey's fingers. She whirled around. A woman, barely reaching her shoulders, stood there, her blonde hair buzzed at the sides and longer on top. Jamila glared from the plastic rectangle pinned to her blue vest. Beneath it, a yellow circle with upturned black lines proclaimed, "Ask me, I am happy to help." A little eager there, Jamila. Kelsey tucked a strand of damp brown hair behind her ear, feeling the elastic band loosening at the back of her head. "Thank you, but I'm okay. I'm just deciding between these wound washes." "Well, I recommend the Neomed wound wash over the Walgreens brand." Jamila leaned in slightly, glancing over her shoulder. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The pharmacist would kill me, but that generic stuff is basically tap water." Kelsey's lips quirked upward. "Your secret's safe." Jamila's gaze dropped to Kelsey's hand. Her eyebrows shot up, disappearing beneath her bangs. "Oh, honey, those little half moons, did someone bite you?" "No." Kelsey tucked her hand against her stomach. The fluorescent light suddenly seemed too bright. She stared at a display of cotton balls. "Cooking accident last night." Jamila tapped her name badge. 15 years in special education before this. I've seen my share of bites. She traced a faint scar on her wrist. "This one, second grader. Looked identical to yours. I needed IV antibiotics. Human mouths are filthier than toilet seats." "Thanks for recommendation." Kelsey snatched the Neomed bottle, plastic crinkling under her grip. She backed away, bumping into a display of sunscreen. "I'm late for an appointment." Kelsey felt Jamila's stare between her shoulder blades all the way to register 3. "Thank you."
Good evening. My name is Deborah Ann Butler, and I'll be reading 2 scenes from my short story, No Questions Asked, which is based in the backwoods of North Florida along the Gulf Coast. First, you'll meet Red Murphy, a taxidermist and widower who for years has turned a blind eye to the use of his remote dock by local pot smugglers. In this scene, Red has just returned home after learning his cancer is terminal. Next, you'll meet Parker Griggs, a scoundrel who for years has pretended to be friends with Red for his own selfish purposes. Red parked his truck under the lean-to and walked slowly to the front porch of his log home, taking in the woods and the river as if seeing them for the first time. Paradise, he thought. Under the porch was a brown paper bag. The words "dock fee" were scrawled on the outside. Inside of the bag was the normal stack of $100 bills. Red went inside, tossed the bag on the dining room table, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. He studied at length the lifelike animal mounts on the living room walls. A few deer, hog heads, a prized fox squirrel, and his humorous display of raccoon peckers attached to a shellacked plaque of cedar. Burned into the cedar were the words "luck had nothing to do with it." Red smiled, remembering the time he'd put a raccoon pecker in Marjorie's glass of sweet tea instead of a swizzle stick. "Howard William Murphy," she'd said, "don't you ever put one of those foolish things in my drink again." "Cheers," he said as he lifted his glass to the menagerie. Marjorie would have also told him not to drink on an empty stomach. What difference does it make now, he thought. The weather that February was chillier than most for Cabbage Creek. The damp cold seeped right through a person's jacket. Parker knew that Red spent his afternoons in his heated shop working on mounts. On his way home from a meeting in Tallahassee, he stopped by to check in on Red. Now that he's feeling so poorly, maybe I can sweet talk him into giving me some of that cash he's been holding on to all these years, he thought. With the maple trees bare, the drive into Red's place was eerie. A murder of crows shot up from the washboard road and settled among the naked branches. Startled, Parker stepped a little heavier on the gas pedal, almost careening off the path and into a dense patch of saw palmettos. He swerved and missed. That was close, he muttered. The light from inside Red's workshop cast a warm glow through the window. Parker knocked on the thick pine door and hollered Red's name. No response. Hey, old buddy, it's me, he said. The door opened freely at Parker's touch. An alligator mount stood on the workbench in a lunging position, facing Parker, its mouth wide open as if ready to attack. Beyond the bench, Red's lifeless body lay sprawled across the concrete floor. A puddle of congealed blood glistened from where his head had hit when he landed. Parker eased his way into the shop, stepped slowly around the workbench, eyeing the stuffed alligator, and cautiously reached into Red's pocket. It wasn't easy to remove the .38 Special, but Parker managed to do it without disturbing Red's body. He grinned at the sight of his own father's gun. Finally, Parker thought, I never understood why Daddy gave this to you instead of me. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Tedasco. I'm going to read from my thesis, which is a collection of short stories and humor stories. And the title of this piece is I Own a House. That Doesn't Mean I Understand It. Ned the Handyman. Good morning. I'm Ned with AAA Handyman. Gary the Homeowner. Thank God. I didn't think you would make house calls on a holiday. I'm Gary. Please come in. Quickly. Do you mind if I smoke? Sorry, I don't even smoke. Maybe wait a minute on the smoking? What's the trouble? Well, Ned, I was trying to hard boil some eggs and noticed that we don't have any hot water. Wouldn't you heat the water on the range? The range? This isn't Wild West, Ned. I need your help. Look, I don't know if this is a city-wide water outage or if the whole country has been impacted. Okay. Are you getting hot water elsewhere in the house? I don't know. Do you think it could be the Russians? Not likely. We'll figure this out so that I understand what we're dealing with. Do you have hard or soft water? Well, the water feels soft. I think it has the usual softness of water. Is water softness seasonal? No. It's definitely average soft, so I'd say soft, unless you think it's hard. Can you point me to the water heater? Absolutely. That comes out when you turn the handle on the sink. It's a bit tricky. Hot's only on the left. I've been meaning to label it with a fire emoji sticker for guests. No, I mean the actual water heater. The water comes hot from the city, Ned. That's why we pay taxes. The water heater provides hot water for the whole house. Sorry, I have to sit down. I'm not a water temperature expert. I don't have a PhD in water texture, Ned. I wasn't expecting an interrogation. I just live here. It's okay. Look, I think most of the houses around here have gas heaters. Did you check if the pilot light was on? Pilot light? What are you saying, Ned? Does this look like LaGuardia? I don't see a Cinnabon here. Gary, the pilot light is a flame that burns. A flame? Burning inside the house? The water heater's probably in the garage. Oh, okay. The garage, I know where that is. Careful, it is slippery in here. Must be all of that hard water that you talked about. What's that smell? Do you mind if I turn on a light in here? I know the light turns on if we open the garage. So if we reenact my car coming home, I can make engine noises while you pretend to be my wife and it's here. Huh, that must be new. Gary, why is the water heater painted like an Easter egg? Well, That's for the hunt. The what? Yeah, I was going to hide that in the backyard with the other eggs. You really can't move that. It did seem a bit heavy, so I sawed off the arms to make it a little easier to move. Also made it a little bit more egg-like. Gary, those aren't arms, they're pipes. You disconnected the hot water from your house and is flooding the garage. And Gary, where is the gas line? The SpongeBob colored arm that I sawed off? I guess. It started hissing at me, so I put some duct tape on it. Duct tape. No, I know my own tape, Ned. I have tape with all the different animals on it for Easter. I'm not an idiot. Gary, listen closely. We need to immediately get out of this sealed garage and call. This is too much, Ned. I need a smoke. No! What? Oh, right. Mary hates it when I smoke inside. Maybe I'll just light some Easter candles for Gary!
Hello, my name is Kiona Flowers, and this is the opening chapter of my historical fiction novel, An Unexpected Match, about a young woman in Regency-era England. Unlike the other young ladies of the time, the mere thought of the season didn't excite Marina. Despite that, she felt the need to give it her all, if not for her sake, then for her mother's, whose eyes regained their light over the past several weeks, and whose reputation would also be affected if Marina were to make some sort of faux pas, such as wearing this dress to any special event. Well, to anywhere. It was undoubtedly beautiful, but it was the furthest thing from proper. No matter how long Marina stared at her reflection, twisting this way and that, the fact remained. Under ordinary circumstances, her mother would never approve of something so bold. Maybe something truly was wrong with her. Mother, she began carefully, I think we ought to listen to Mrs. Hall. Their eyes met once again through the mirror's reflection, this time one set pleading and the other resolute. In fact, Marina couldn't recall the last time she saw that emotion in her mother's eyes. Absolute surety. There's really no need, Lady Morton sighed. Only one person will see you in it. Who? She drew in a breath, the noise of the world outside, a woman giggling as her husband whispered in her ear, a stray dog whining as it searched for scraps. Church bells ringing in the distance began to fade. Your fiancé. Marina recoiled, her cheeks prickling as if she'd been struck across the face. The telltale signs of blush, red and splotchy, bloomed in that spot and crept down her neck. Of course, Lady Morton could be referring to the distant future. The alternative, well, Marina couldn't fathom any other alternatives. Mother, what is happening? At this, Lady Morton sighed once more. This is your second season, Marina. I had to do something. With each word, Marina's breath came at a more frequent pace. The sounds of the city were suddenly all she could hear. The couple bickered with one another. The dog barked at every passerby who approached it with a morsel of food, and the church bell ceased, leaving in its place the kind of silence that is not silent and is instead stifling. Marina teetered, the pedestal shrinking several sizes the moment those words were spoken into reality. Mother, Marina placed a hand across her stomach and breathed in deeply, the way her beloved father taught her to do when everything was too much. What did you do exactly? Marina turned her back to the mirror and faced her mother. However, she still could not raise her head, for fear of what she might see in her mother's eyes. It was all beginning to dawn on her, this new possibility, one where she had no choice in matters of marriage and the heart, of her body, her soul. The look in her mother's eyes, she knew, would seal her fate and turn possibility into reality. Marina prolonged this moment, more delicate than glass, one where she was still a young girl and not yet a woman, by watching Mrs. Hall, who had retreated to the back of the room. The poor woman tried her best to appear busy among the fabrics. She was, after all, one of the few, if not the only modiste in the city who despised drama, gossip, and all the other sinful things that the season had to offer. In her eyes, there were only two things worth merit in the season. That is, dresses, and the ever-rare love match. Marina was told that Mrs. Hall's own marriage was a love match, as was Marina, Lady Morton snapped. Their eyes met, and in that moment, it was as if her world tilted on its axis. Marina was indeed engaged, and now she was a woman. The revelation made the sunlight filtering in through the window burn bright, bright enough that Marina could still see its phrase through the skin of her lids once they closed, and she crumpled in a heap on the floor. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Carolyn Richter, and my thesis is a collection of nonfiction pieces exploring a theme of connection, especially through my experiences growing up in Gen Z, where many of our interactions happen from behind a screen. Today I'll be reading a short story I wrote for a summer residency exercise where we played with the structure of How to Become a Writer by Lori Moore. Without further ado, here is my version called How to Be Cool Catholic Middle School Edition. When you start sixth grade, it helps to be the new kid joining a class that has mostly known each other since kindergarten. Bonus points if it's a Catholic school and you are not Catholic. Being the only girl in your class who can't eat Eucharist wafers, which makes them look even more delicious, will make you look mysterious and interesting. School uniforms will prevent you from making any bold fashion statements, but don't let that stop you from expressing your style. First impressions matter, and it's all about the little things. Chop your bowl cut shorter than usual. Wear an unconventional pair of pink glasses with clip-on sunglass frames. Get braces installed on two, but only two of your teeth. When people are scared to steal your style, you know you're giving it girl energy. Your prior experience with religious rituals, Buddhist funerals, will not be relevant in this space, but you will still find it exciting to buy your first rosary. Unlike your style, someone will steal your rosary, but since you are not Catholic, you will not feel guilty about praying for a curse upon the thief. Middle school will make you feel different, but religion is a peripheral part of that. You will avoid people, including the one girl you knew before middle school from a toddler's ballet class, because you decide you take up too much space even before anyone tells you this. Sit by yourself because the other lunch tables are too full. Respond briefly when people talk to you because they don't have time to hear your answers. Avoid raising your hand in class because someone else has something better to say. Spend recess climbing a pole at the back of the playground because there's no room in your classmates' friend groups. Start overthinking everything you say or do because none of it feels good enough. Start overthinking everything you write because you put too much pressure on the only thing you feel okay at. Realize that you don't like being alone as much as you thought. Show some community involvement by taking advantage of your school's no-cut sports teams like basketball and soccer, and stick with recreational gymnastics on the side. You are kind of terrible at all of them, but you'll be too oblivious and non-competitive to care. These are two qualities that make you a bad athlete. Somehow you even manage to trip on a basketball court, skin your knee, and airball two free throws, a sequence of events that results in a week-long hospital stay for osteomyelitis. The injury puts an end to your promising 0-point season, but coaches seem to like you because you smile a lot and show up early for every practice. These are two qualities that make you a good friend. Eventually, you'll be in the right place at the right time when a random group of girls in your class hangs out at recess for the first time. That group continues meeting up at lunch and recess every day, and with a gentle push from a few of them, you continue joining. At some point, you no longer need the push. You will not remain close to most of them by the end of middle school, and 10 years later, none of you will be in touch anymore. But for a moment, you felt like you belonged with them. You learn that middle school and all that follows is filled with these moments, scattered episodes where you feel like you belong, and others where your life is in disarray. These moments of disarray are the secret to achieving the highest level of coolness because you realize that the coolest people you've met are the ones who made you feel like you matter. Pull up an extra chair for newcomers when your table gets full. Ask questions to anyone who hasn't said much in a group. Invite someone you barely know to join you when you see them alone in a crowd. Laugh a little harder for the person who seemed nervous to tell a joke. Surprise people by showing up for them when they weren't expecting it. These are all things that really cool people have done for you. You will realize when you become close again that these are all things that the girl from your toddler's ballet class does all the time. And 10 years later, you will still be friends. Even after all your years in Catholic school, you never know for certain whether God is real or not. But those chapters of feeling like you belong and those moments of finding someone cool when you feel completely lost seem like some sign from the universe that someone out there is always looking out for you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brendan, and I'll be reading from my memoir, The Squirrel Hunter, which weaves my life through the stories of my father Brian and his best friend Billy. And this section comes after I describe my father's choice to start a career in photography and how it was in stark contrast to his previous plan to join the Marines. Growing up, I never thought of the contradiction these pictures presented for the man my father is. In some ways, he is still the same boy who played in the dirt and dreamed of the Marine Corps. Though now it seems like he hides behind a wall of vanity, expensive cars, and increasingly younger women. But I know some part of him is still an artist with a knack for beauty and a love of nature. He tried teaching me the finer points of photography as I got older. I never really listened until after I joined the Army. Then I realized how fragile the peace of a normal life could be. From this, I developed a yearning for some creative outlet. Finally, I chose to listen when he explained the art of film photography. He talked through things like aperture, shutter speed, metering, and other basics in minute detail. It far surpassed what I was prepared to remember, but I enjoyed the time together. Despite most of his lessons going over my head, I let him explain. Eventually, things stuck, and I gained some confidence to try. In the summer, I would take a heavy packing camera to the thick woods and trails behind the estates and old money ranches a few miles from town in an area called Swickley Heights. There is an abundance of clear creeks and thriving, bustling forests, so different from the rusty steel mills that line the river. When I walked the trails, I would line up shot after shot of whatever seemed worth expending a bit of film. That's the real difference Brian helped me realize. Film is a form of artistic, creative ammunition, and you're surrounded by targets. With maybe 24 to 36 potential pictures on a film roll, you must have the vision to see what's worth a shot. It's just you, nature, and your analog machine. On the camera, there are just a few levers and dials. Through the lens, a bobbing meter should tell you if your picture will come out as something more than the blinding white rays of overexposure or the indistinguishable shadows of underexposure. When you're ready, you find the shot, line it up, focus the camera, set the knobs and dials, watch your meter bob to the sweet spot, then click. That's it. Somewhere in your film roll, there's now a picture that you won't be able to see for days. The film then requires delicate handling and a trained professional who develops pictures in a mysterious dark room. Nowadays, you'll be lucky to find a place that can develop your film. All this is in stark contrast to the ease and convenience that comes with digital photography. With digital, you can take picture after picture with instant gratification of the photo on a screen. It slowly fills an intangible amount of space on a memory card that can handle hundreds, if not thousands, of photos. I think digital takes the fun out of the hobby. Film is worth the effort. It takes discipline and patience. Those are two aspects I never expected to see in my father, but ones he helped me find through his chosen medium. Now we'll read from the end of this chapter where I discuss Billy, my father's best friend, and his experience in war. While Brian was learning photography in the 90s, Billy was taking pictures too. Not pictures of beautifully stacked canoes that inspire calm, or a leaf that instills appreciation for black and white texture against vibrant color. No, not nature at all. Not even pictures of smiling couples in love and surrounded by family. Instead, Billy's pictures captured human nature, the world, the outside world rather than the world outside. Things like abandoned cars, armored vehicles, burning husks of civilian cars, and corpse after decomposing corpse across a smoky desert. Billy wasn't delivering pizzas, cheating on his girlfriends, or starting a business like Brian. At that time, his boots marched across the sand, across the world from his friends and family as an infantryman in the Marines. He fought Saddam and liberated Kuwait as a spearhead of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, the Gulf War. Images of large-scale combat in the 90s were far more controlled. Official photos were most numerous and always had an agenda from the military or government. It took brave journalists under the monitoring and escort of soldiers to bring perspectives that were less sanitized. The soldiers with them were, of course, guiding what was shown, but for the average grunt, cameras were contraband. So why did Billy bring this disposable camera into war? A young Marine with his upbringing and basic education was unlikely to have an overreaching moral or political agenda like a whistleblower. He probably just wanted to keep souvenirs of his adventure, like how people used to buy cheap disposable Kodaks for their vacations. To capture moments out in the sun or dinners together with family. Except in this vacation for Billy, there was far too much sun and a different kind of family. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kylie Garrett, and I'll be reading from the opening of a short story in my thesis, a collection called A Cool, Dry Place. This piece is called Yins Are Gold. Pittsburgh wakes up slowly because it never sleeps well, tossing and turning with the raucous wheels of insomniac freight trains. They screech and grate through the black of night with a reverberating force that necessitates earplugs. Hannah wakes up early, has always woken up early, before darkness diffuses into smog gray, before hordes of commuters even rub their eyes awake, because she likes the city best when it hardly exists. When she's alone with her inhales and exhales in the drone of the decrepit heater as it whooshes through her father's townhouse, all creaking, dark, scuffed wood. Curled in a twin-sized mattress in her childhood bedroom, head propped against a mascara-stained pillow, she searches the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections inmate locator for surnames that match hers, Henselman. She checks Apple News for grisly discoveries of young women. These habits are executed by muscle memory, as compulsive as checking her email. When her alarm sounds, she sheds an embarrassingly homely nightgown that is celery green and dotted with salmon-colored flowers. Hideous, she knows, especially for someone who's only 23, but precious too because it was her mother's. She is aware she shouldn't sleep in it, that she should try to preserve it since her mother has been dead for years, for most of Hannah's life. But the nightgown is sturdy, made of thick flannel, and far more resilient and durable than the jewelry was. Her heirlooms were rhodium-covered metal rings that stained her fingers and lost shape after a few months. Dividing her hair into 3 sections, arms stretched to their full length, she plaits her copper hair, wild, thick, ragged at the ends, in a braid down her back. Unbearably shy, she cannot stand haircuts. She cannot stand the forced intimacy with a stranger, all that time with her own reflection. It used to be that Haley cut her hair. She watched hours of YouTube videos, ordered shearing scissors, combs, and serums from Amazon. But Hannah's sister has been missing for 2 years now, and so it just grows and grows. She unzips a black JanSport backpack, and the front flap drops open like a weak jaw. A canister of Narcan sits in the pouch meant for water bottles. It is so portable and so powerful that Hannah carries it the same way Haley carried her EpiPen, instinctively with solemn readiness. Before the Sacklers pulled their shit and naloxone became so widely necessary, it was administered as an injection in hospitals. It was only approved as an over-the-counter spray within the last few years. Now it's very easy to use. Insert the nozzle in either nostril, stabilize it at the base of the nose, and press the plunger. Though instant withdrawal can sometimes be an ugly state, the fury of being yanked from an all-encompassing high is infinitely less harrowing than the cold-to-the-touch silence preceding it. Hannah, Haley, and their father were all trained. After Haley's first arrest for possessing prescription pills that were not hers, they attended a virtual harm reduction class where no one turned their cameras on or listed their names. It had been far more valuable than CPR training, which Hannah received but never used as a teenage lifeguard. She cannot expunge the image of her sister slumped over a pile of laundry on her bedroom floor, her lips tinted blue. The backpack is not big enough. It is a game of Tetris, arranging the stolen sunglasses and kitchenware and generic wireless headphones and portable speakers. Pawnable things. She is tiny, 5 feet tall with a cherubic face, and she is stubbornly timid, unresponsive to the command speak up. Her sweet, forgettable prettiness is part of what makes her an effective shoplifter. She isn't afraid to admit she likes it, the rush of success, the power in being underestimated. When she lifts the backpack, she heaves it over her shoulder. At 6 a.m., the streets are empty of people and full of things. Southside is all townhouses with cement slab porches and families who have lived in them for generations. It is all auto shops repurposed as trendy, industrial sleek coffee shops and graffitied railroad overpasses. Lawn chairs scatter the street to reserve parking spots, bikes lean against chain link fences, and shards of glass bottles glow iridescent in the morning twilight. Amidst the clutter and silence, Hannah feels as though time has stopped for everyone except her. She cuts across an empty Food Lion parking lot, a monolithic jack-o'-lantern with fluorescent lights that are humming, always humming, even when no one is inside. The backpack is unwieldy and oppressive, forcing her shoulders to curl in toward her chest. She slouches toward the bus station, en route to Yinzer Gold. Her father's best friend from childhood, Joe, sleeps above his pawn shop. After their mother died, it was Joe who wore an apron and basted Thanksgiving turkeys, who baked gingerbread cookies. He never turns her away, even when she shows up before the sun rises. And he always accepts her things, as well as her answer. I found these. Thank you.
Hello, My name is Jeff Sitkovich, and I'll be reading from the opening scene of my novel, which is called The Bigfoot Cult. It's a satirical thriller that mashes up Hollywood, paranormal, and skateboarding cultures in an obvious combination. So here we go. It was the final shoot of the season finale of Star-Crossed Love, a bottom barrel knockoff of The Bachelorette that the network greenlit during a cocaine-fueled weekend retreat in Palm Springs. Like most reality shows, it promised true love but delivered manufactured drama and enough alcohol to pickle the average human liver. Kevin, their male winner, was currently being hoisted onto a white horse by two grips who looked like they'd rather be handling radioactive waste. The horse was a rental from a nearby children's petting zoo. The setting was a hillside bluff in San Luis Obispo, California, about 200 miles northwest of Los Angeles, overlooking farmland and grazing cattle. The star of the show was Nikki Nick, a briefly famous hip hop artist from the 1990s whose claim to fame was a one-hit wonder track called Rock My Rump with her then boyfriend, Freaky Fred. As Chris squinted through his director's viewfinder at the shot, she appeared at his hip. I need to talk to you. Absolutamundo, said Chris. What's up? Chris, listen, Nikki said. Let me keep it real. I'm getting bad vibes about this whole thing. I went to rehab 2 exits from here. Chris's first reaction was the smirk, remembering that viral video from the 2000s, Nikki freaking out in a South Beach club, smashing bottles behind the bar. Then he realized laughing wasn't exactly appropriate. He forced his face into a serious, concerned expression. Seriously, Nikki continued, that was a rough time for me, right after Freaky Fred and I broke up, and this doesn't feel much better. This whole thing is ridiculous. Am I really about to get engaged to some Ken doll on a horse just to reboot my career? Chris scratched his stubble. Isn't his name Kevin? Yes, and I know his goddamn name, Nikki snapped, but I don't want to marry him. This is all fake and everyone knows it. I'm 45 years old, for Christ's sakes. I want something real. Chris sighed, summoning the manipulative powers that had served him well in this business. He draped an arm around Nikki's shoulder. Listen, I get it. Unfortunately, multi-layered, nuanced, real people are not what anyone wants to watch on television. They want to see the Nikki Nick they remember from the 90s, the Nikki who dated Freaky Fred. They want to see her reborn. He gestured to the heavens as if he was Moses parting the Red Sea. They want to see you get a ring on that finger. They want it to be amazing and sweet so she can shed a tear into their bowl of ice cream they're eating while watching on the couch. He locked eyes with her. You and only you have that power to make them shed that tear, Nikki. It's like your superpower. She chewed her lip, considering. Then, as if on cue, Kevin tumbled off the horse, hitting the ground with a thwack. Chris shrugged. Plus, you can always just break up with him later on the tell-all special. Yeah, good point. But this better be amazing, Chris, or it's your ass. Chris steered her back into the wildflowers, then rushed to the main camera. Absolutely, you're about to be part of one of the most beautiful moments in the history of reality television. The director of photography handed Chris the monitor so he could see all the angles from all the cameras. Epic. Let's rock and roll. He raised his voice across the hillside. All right, people, let's get set. First positions. A hush fell over the scene. And action. 2 rusty wind machines roared to life, billowing Nikki's hair and gown in a dramatic swirl. Kevin urged the petting zoo horse forward. Cue the doves, Chris shouted, signaling the sketchy bird wranglers. The men unhinged the crates, sending feathers flying upward. Nikki turned her gaze to the sky, a single forced tear rolling down her cheek. Beautiful, Chris whispered, already mentally accepting his Emmy award. Everything was going exactly as planned, for about 3 whole seconds. Then, instead of soaring majestically into the fading sunlight, the doves veered wildly off course. Half of them careened straight toward Kevin and his horse with the precision of heat-seeking missiles locked onto their targets. Holy shit, Kevin yelped as the winged creatures crashed into him, their tiny talons raking his arms and face like a scene from the Hitchcock classic The Birds. The remaining doves targeted the equipment. The lucky ones collided with the lights, sending the crew scrambling as the rigging toppled over like dominoes. Then several unfortunate birds flew directly into the wind machine, creating a gruesome avian smoothie that exploded into the air like the world's most disturbing confetti. The commotion was too much for the petting zoo horse. It reared violently, bucking Kevin off its back straight into Nikki. The collision sent her flying, flailing, falling, She tumbled down the grassy hill, crushed flowers and clumps of earth filling her nostrils as she rolled. At the bottom, she landed face first into a pile of cow manure. Above, the horse took off into the dusk, no doubt heading for a better career opportunity. The chaos settled like dust after a building implosion. Anyone not holding a production camera had their phones out recording. They panned over the wreckage, the shattered set, the dead birds, the fallen couple, before finally settling on the director. The crew stared at Chris, silent, wide-eyed. He blinked, taking in the carnage. The gears in his mind turned with agonizing slowness, like a rusted Ferris wheel operated by a sloth. Finally, he cleared his throat, his voice barely audible over the distant sound of Nikki screaming obscenities that would require significant bleeping in post-production. Cut. Thank you very much.
Hello. Welcome back to our fall thesis reading. And we are going to begin part 2 of our evening with a reading from Kate McGowan. Kate?
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Kate McGowan. This is Escape Route, a story about a woman who hears her name in the static and decides to follow it. Escape Route. The night the radio whispers Mara Callahan's name, static pulls at her. The DJ's voice spins ribbons of words and weather. By 3 a.m., she's on the old highway the locals call the Corpse Road, her headlights brushing specters, their faces torn like flags. She tells herself she's only driving to get her charger, but she's taken the back road, the one that remembers. There, Tom's motel looms around the bend, his motorcycle glints in the parking lot. A lure. Through the window, a light glows. A silhouette twitches once, then twice. Mara knocks until her knuckles sting. No answer. Her palm rests on the thin wood. She wonders if the door might splinter under her weight. After a beat, she pulls an old grocery list from her bag, scratches her initials across it, and slides it under the door. At the end of the hall, she leans into the ice machine. Its blue hum shivering up her spine. The carpet smells like wet cardboard left too long in the rain. She waits, an orb weaver plucking strands. Another night, months ago, in the same motel. They hid from a storm in room 112. The power flickered. They sat cross-legged on the carpet eating peanut candies while insects drowned on the sill. Tom lined up hotel pens like soldiers. "You think everything's a message," he said. "It is," she told him. Even silence. He tapped the first pen. It rolled toward her. "What does this say?" "That you're leaving." He looked past her toward the lightning as it threaded across the panes. "Or that I've already gone." Thunder rattled the casements. She traced a constellation on his wrist. "What's this one?" he asked. "An escape route." He laughed softly, not meeting her eyes. "You're a missed transmission, like a radio between stations." Mara's always chased signals. As a child, she pressed her ear to sockets, sure she'd hear astronauts. She mapped ceiling cracks into continents, convinced her fate hid within their borders. Even now, after therapy, after go-nowhere jobs and abandoned apartments, she hunts the quiet for clues. She's broken into boyfriends' emails, followed strangers from trains to their cars close enough so she could glimpse their panic when they catch her shadow. It isn't jealousy, it's hunger for the unlit parts of the map. Maybe Tom's inside with another woman, or maybe there's no Tom at all, only a lamp, her reflection ghosting the glass. He'll soon be gone, backpack stuffed with the things she gave him, a sweater, 2 books, a bottle of salt. She imagines him under another name in another state, recasting her as a story. There was this woman who thought radio spoke to her. Or maybe he's in that room right now, thumb hovering over her name on his phone, afraid she'll answer, afraid she won't. All she wants is to hear him repeat her name the way he used to before he moved out. It would prove she still exists in his life's frequency. She wants to know what he calls her when he's alone. And if he won't say it, she'll make him press her name out, syllable by syllable. Back on the landing, the corridor stretches, bricks fading from beige to a deep aquatic hue. Doors multiply, none with numbers. Even the ice machine's gone. A clerk drifts toward her, clutching a jar of moths, their wings wisping. She turns a corner and discovers her apartment door between 2 vending machines. Her note peeks out from under it, but new words appear beneath her initials. Open anyway. She touches the knob. A living thing, it knows her hand. Down the hall, a radio crackles. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ralph Framolino, and I'll be reading an excerpt from The American Club. It's my novel about a burned out American journalist who takes a foreign aid job in Bangladesh right after Obama's historic election in 2008, and here he broods after facing a major setback. Silent night, surreal night, Dhaka sleeps. The city rests in ancient solitude, nestled in primordial darkness. No streetlights, no rickshaws, no beggars, no movement. Shops are shuttered, their corrugated metal doors rolled down and locked tight. Sidewalks are deserted, except for the street dogs, mangy back alley mutts that sleep curled in pairs, snouts to asses, breathing yin and yang symbols. Drexel Weller sits by the Weston's rooftop pool. The only sound is the thrum and gurgle of the filter. The only light comes indirectly from the electronic displays of consumer goods that flash across huge digital billboards looming over the nearby traffic circle like video screens at a football stadium. Then it starts, an electronic click, followed by a distant, forlorn cry that rises in pitch as if the earth itself cracked open and began to weep. Weller leans forward. He hears more clicks, more cries emanating from loudspeakers perched on the minarets of Dhaka's ubiquitous mosques. Within seconds, the air is filled with recorded voices that increase in volume and widen in harmonics. The chorus builds to a crescendo, like the final rounds of Ravel's Bolero, calling for all the righteous to face Mecca, to fall on their knees, and to bear witness of Allah, the all-powerful, Allah the merciful, Allah the good. Since his arrival, Weller has been fascinated, even beguiled by the Muslim call to prayer. The azan goes out 5 times a day, pervading and dividing all human activity into predictable intervals. He has heard the call while waiting for his car, while sitting in his hotel room, while doing laps in the American Club pool. He's heard it piped in through the sound system of Dhaka's modern shopping mall as he stood gazing at the glittering displays of Bangladeshi wedding dresses. He's heard it while standing in line at government offices, watched as it emptied those offices of both high-handed officials and their brow-beaten supplicants as they left to kneel side by side on prayer mats as one in the next room. Yet for all of the azan's charm, Weller also finds it chilling. That's because he knows it doubles as the battle cry for a small and radicalized army that has attacked America, its allies, and everything the West represents. It's an army consumed with righteous zeal and armed with unconventional weapons, box cutters, hijacked airplanes, trucks filled with dynamite. As one of the LA Times reporters who covered 9/11, Weller knows this because he has seen the Army's handiwork for himself. And even now, years later, his memory permits him only fragments of the images, only the faintest impressions of the devastation wrought by Allah's self-sacrificing volunteers. Pieces of paper swirling through deserted Manhattan streets. The Have You Seen Me posters with candid photos of office workers, busboys, and stockbrokers never to be heard from again. And Ground Zero itself, a crater of crushed concrete and broken glass and twisted rebar, where scores of firefighters and forensic experts sift through the rubble under the Twin Towers' twisted girders, those hashtags of American sorrow. But the thing Weller remembers the most is the stench. It was a sickly sweet smell, a blend of vulcanized rubber, fried plastic, spent fuel, and burned flesh. An odor so pungent that he couldn't wash it out of his hair at night. So pervasive that it clung to his fingertips when he typed. So powerful that when he finally flew home, he immediately got a buzz cut, sent his clothes to the cleaners, and heaved his reeking suitcase into the dumpster behind the nearest drugstore. Weller holds these images, then he lets them go. Thank you.
Hello, all. My name is Deon Campbell, and I will be reading an excerpt from my short story titled Hand Me Down, which is a story about a young girl named Pearl who spends all of her free time finding treasures in a nearby river. In this excerpt, we meet Nina, the young daughter of Pearl's landlord, who is beginning to obsess about these river trips as well. Do you always traverse out in the woods? Pearl jumps about a foot in the air at the sudden voice behind her, much too vibrant for the small market on a Tuesday morning. The apples that were delicately balanced at the top of her basket go tumbling out at her sudden spasm, and when she drops down to grab at them before they roll under the displays and get lost to the dust mites, she comes face to face with Nina's shiny baby doll shoes. So shiny, in fact, that Pearl can see in perfect detail the sour expression that crawls onto her own face. She stands and dusts herself off, stuffing the apple back in place and securing them with a bag of rice over top. Who's asking? Don't be obtuse, Nina says, arms crossing. She has her nose up in the air like she's better than Pearl, and it's obvious that she is, and it does nothing more than tick Pearl off. From behind her, Nina's ma is haggling the price of a slab of marbled meat, and Pearl wonders if her own mother would have brought her to the market with her. Pearl turns and stuffs a bottle of milk in her basket, almost squashing a perfectly round persimmon. Go away. When she turns around, Nina is even closer than before and cornering her against the fruit stall. Answer my question first. No. When Nina opens her mouth again, Pearl shoves an apple in it until the skin breaks on her teeth and catches and runs off. A few hours later, when she's unloading her bike of groceries back at home, Pa blearily watching from a half-creaked open window, Pearl only gets a brief shadow of Nina in her peripheral vision before a half-bitten apple is thrown at the back of her head. It hits solid against her cranium and rolls in the muddy, hay-mixed dirt until the teeth marks are lined in dark, soggy lines. After that, Nina doesn't leave her alone. When Mr. Jones and his wife visit to check in on Pa, Nina invites herself along. Pearl has to serve her warm tea to stave off the winter chill, while Pa groggily goes to search for a shirt to put on. But at least Nina can't say anything too snobby with her parents sitting right beside her. That doesn't stop Pearl from adding just a bit too much sugar to Nina's cup, though, just to see Nina's lips purse as the sugar water syrup hits her tongue. Nina's ma nudges her in the side to make her straighten her posture, and that just makes Pearl feel even better. Other times, when the grown folks are absent, Nina pesters Pearl about the forest. Sometimes it's when Pearl is at the library, trying to find a book she needs that covers what the old edition of her math book doesn't. It's hard to parse through them when many aren't organized correctly, haphazardly shoved back in place by the two overworked librarians. Even harder when the spoiled girl throws in her 2 cents for each title. Nina's whispers, if they could be called such, are harsh next to her ear, as if the girl had never had to be quiet a day in her life. Enough so that she gets the two of them kicked out for the day after a loud bout of shushing and shoving. Pearl's only reprieve is the river. It's the only place Nina isn't comfortable going to, by the way she hesitates at the tree line of the forest. She looks as if she's expecting a little lost kitten to be snatched up by vultures as soon as she steps foot underneath the wiry tree branches. Pearl takes the break for as long as she can get, whenever she can. But every time she leaves, Nina is still there. Even if it's just past dark and the moon isn't quite high enough to illuminate, Nina is sitting on the raggedy, cold grass, hugging her knees until Pearl comes out with a full bike basket. Home now? Nina asks every time, as she jumps up and rubs at brown stains on her iridescent, milky stockings. Pearl always takes pity on her for some reason. Maybe it's the stressed lines that border her face whenever an owl hoots, or there's a rustling of jackrabbits as they find their nests. Or maybe it's just because she actually stays there, no matter how late it gets. Whatever the reason, Pearl always walks her all the way up to their front door and waits until she gets let in by her fussing mama, who is quick to notice the ruined brown-streaked stockings that stretch up Nina's legs. Though Pearl is standing right next to her, Nina's mom never says anything to her, but Nina makes sure to turn and wave goodbye before the door, made of dark wood and stained glass painted like flowers, gets slammed in her face. When Pearl goes home, crossing the threshold of their lightweight, light-colored door that only stays shut when they flip the latch bolt closed, she doesn't get fussed at for having must clothes or for staying out late. But sometimes her pa nods at her from the couch, munching at a bowl of peanuts, and offers her a handful when she passes by to turn on the lamp. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maximilian Dar, and I'm going to be reading from the beginning of my short story, Across the State on Stilts. The summer Stiltman came. Bean and I were obsessed with running our missions in the woods near the mine. I had my new toy gun strapped to my back, and my brother cradled a stick between his arms. I was born in April. Bean joined in May 2 years later, and I chart our childhood by the birthday presents we played with throughout the summers. Dad always got the best gifts from the road. The stock of my wooden gun was engraved with the town he'd bought it in, Durango, Colorado, and if I shifted the barrel, it would clap and shoot a cork out, attached to a string. In Ohio, Dad found a magic store and got Bean a trick deck of cards, which he practiced with every day after we were forced to stay inside. The cards tapered so if you turned one around and stroked your fingers down the deck like you were searching for a splinter, the odd card would slide out, like magic. By the time school started that fall, Bean could find my card and bring it to the top of the deck with just a snap of his fingers. The memory of Stiltman, that entire summer, is that backwards card, a slice of my brain reversed so it sticks out just slightly, a rock wedged forever in my sneaker. We first learned about Stiltman on the evening news, a short feature about the man walking on stilts across Michigan to raise money for the troops. He was using local stations for publicity and relying on good-natured folk to give him a place to sleep. He was down in Lansing then, but they showed a map of his route, all the way up the Mitten, across the Mackinac Bridge, and on to Copper Harbor. He was going to pass through our town of Iron Creek before his stop in Marquette. We couldn't believe our luck. Nothing ever passed through Iron Creek, not in books or movies. Sometimes we weren't even shown on maps, but now real history was marching in on stilts. We told Dad about it when he called from the road, and he promised to watch for the man while driving. Every night we tuned in to Stiltman's update, but it wasn't until he reached the Upper Peninsula that anyone else in town seemed to care. The news segments got longer. Welcome Stiltman posters went up in a few shop windows. A week before he came past, the weather turned and rain forced him short of a stop. His newly announced route had him not just passing through, but staying overnight in Iron Creek. Then, even the bank updated their sign to greet him. The station reported his host family would be selected from a lottery after his interview, and Bean and I fantasized ever since about winning that draw. The day of his stop, we woke past noon after staying up too late in excitement. Mom had already left for her shift at the grocery store. Let's hurry, I said, shaking Bean out of bed. We got to get to the park. Can I practice my cards first? You can do it after. I knew he wanted to impress Stiltman with one of his tricks. He'd even gotten pretty good, but Mom hadn't let us go to the park without her since the girl from Deerton went missing, and I didn't want her coming back and changing our mind. Our day was going to be perfect. We each slurped down our cereals in a rush and were out the door, huddling into the thick humidity rising off the lake. Past the Miners Park sign, past the playground padded with rust-colored wood chips, we hit the tree line and I hopped off my bike, letting it glide riderless before it buckled to the ground. Bean did the same. We left the metal skeletons where they fell and entered the woods. It was a 20-minute walk to the abandoned iron mine. Decades worth of tunnels collapsed in and churned about, leaving a mile-wide football field deep crater in its wake. It was jilted and scary and perfect for our imaginations to run wild. We didn't move straight towards it, but like how we thought real soldiers would move, zigzagging from tree to tree, slamming our backs into the trunk, peering around each side before sprinting again. Bean ran ahead of me, his baggy shirt flapping around him. He ducked against a tree and beckoned me towards him. The wooden gun swung in my arms as I ran to his side. Maddie, he whispered. I turned to him. He was bent around the trunk, and I followed his gaze to the chain link fence. We'd made it. I knelt to the dirt to map our plan of attack. No, Maddie, look. Bean lifted his arm and pointed towards the mine. There's a backpack. Bean, your arm. Get back. You'll be spotted. That day, the mine was pretend enemy territory. He didn't listen and stood. I looked at his stick, his make-believe gun, lying in the dirt, and climbed to my feet. Bean gripped the honeycomb fence above his head. A circuitry of bike trails cut through the forest, and I stepped over one to join him. See, he said, a backpack. I saw it now. A yellow backpack floated over the abyss, a worn zebra keychain swinging from its zipper. The mine's edge was not clean cut. Rather, the earth had opened quick and jagged, swallowing all it could before choking. Sheets of rock and dirt hung frozen halfway down the bowl. Trees leaned over the void, roots torn free, holding onto embankments of dirt. One of these trees had snagged the backpack. Its fabric was dirty, and a stain blossomed from the bottom as if it were full of sludgy, greasy coffee. My gut churned looking at it and the drop below. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Butler. I will be reading a nonfiction short story about a trip that I took to Italy. It's called Andiamo. You are walking the streets of Bari, the jewel of southern Italy, a glittering gem on the Adriatic. It is in Il Tacco, the Italians say, the heel, and they point to their foot. You visualize the boot of Italy and see Bari there, just above the ankle. In Bari, you find that kotse is both a regional seafood delicacy and an insult to a woman with an unsightly face. You are surprised to find the dish delicious. In Bari, the dialect is heavy in your mouth. Sto dormendo becomes sto gadorm, dialect for I'm sleeping. In Bari, the drinking water served at restaurants is still or con gas. Your mother orders it con gas. In Bari, the figs are so juicy and voluptuous that you eat them with a spoon and a napkin under your chin. In a piazza, an old man sells them out of a basket attached to the back wheel of his red Vespa. Sono un afrodisiaco, he tells you with a wink. You buy 5 and eat them like dessert. In Bari, panzerotte, dripping in oil, are baked to perfection. It's an insult to call to calzone, but your American taste can't compare it to anything else. The dough is savory, the insides molten and rich. Shaped like a crescent moon, a panzerotto is a dream. You eat it sitting on a plastic chair in a small seaside restaurant and use a single-ply napkin to dab at the grease in the corners of your mouth. Mozzarella, stained orange from tomato sauce, drips languidly from the missing bite. Peroni, Italy's light beer, is crisp, malty, and effervescent on your tongue. The sea breeze is gentle through the open door. In Bari, you say this out loud without wondering if anyone is listening. Have I found heaven? Your tour guide, Vinicio, a local friend of a friend, speaks 4 languages. He is about your age. Your father lets you know this. Your father lets you know in no uncertain terms that he'd like it if you married the tour guide. You don't know this now, but 3 years later, you will return to Bari and you will visit the tour guide. He'll lend you his room, a twin bed with Ferrari red sheets, Ferrari posters on the wall, and miniature Ferraris in glass display cases. The tour guide will sleep on the couch. His parents will let you know in no uncertain terms that you are like a daughter to them. You smile in Italian. You have no feelings for the tour guide, and he has none for you. In Bari, you are hosted for dinner, which takes 4 hours. All manner of culinary delights cross your palate. Mozzarella di bufala tied up like a package, salty prosciutto wrapped around slivers of melone, and a tender dark meat whose taste you can't quite put a finger on. Che cos'è? You ask your host. Puledra, he grins. Your Italian is decent, but not great. Puledra, you question? He neighs. You shudder and decline seconds. There is Bari and there is Bari Vecchia, old Bari, ancient Bari, but Bari Vecchia is very much alive. Just a splash of a town. It takes all of 15 minutes to walk through, but labyrinthine alleyways with hairpin turns give it an eternal feel. In Bari Vecchia, gray-haired signoras make pasta outside their apartments in the street under striped awnings. On card tables, they roll out dough, using wooden tools to cut pieces of orecchiette, pasta shaped like little ears. Their hands are soft, like the dough they knead. Little circles of pasta dry in the sun, waiting to be bagged and purchased and dropped in salted boiling water, paired with spicy arrabbiata sauce or cime di rapa, a local dish made of broccoli rabe. Your mouth waters. In Bari Vecchia, you stumble upon a beautiful church with checkered board tiles and find yourself witness to a wedding. The bride is all white taffeta, her bridesmaids sultry in green sequins. You think, what a beautiful place for a wedding, but you haven't yet seen the basilica. Just up the street, the Basilica di San Nicola stands solemnly. It is nearly 1,000 years old. Inside, you marvel at its ancient beauty, neck sore from gazing up at the vaulted glory. Downstairs, in the crypt, you jostle with other tourists to get a peek at the saint's bone. Your image of a ruby-suited gift-bearer with a jolly disposition is shattered. Placard tells you that Saint Nick resurrected the bodies of 3 butchered children sometime in the early 2nd century. It smells of legend and lore, and you are intoxicated. Your mother lights a candle in the crypt and purchases a small glass vial of healing oil, seeped from the very bone you just laid eyes on. You'll never think of Santa Claus the same way again. You emerge from the dark basilica out onto the stone pavement and squint at the bright whiteness. Your tour guide takes you to another piazza. In it is a section of a street so old they've roped it off with chains. You step to the edge of the rectangle, no bigger than a sitting room. Eyes closed, you transport yourself back in time to the cobblestone path, now blooming with wildflowers and dandelion weeds. What chariots drawn by noble steeds galloped here centuries ago? What toga-clad locals traded the day's gossip in this square? Still, you imagine, there was probably an old man peddling figs with a twinkle in his eye. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Noah Devine. I will be reading the opening of my dark fantasy novel. There is only one place to begin. In a haze, in a courtyard, in a city barely alive. Viseo. Wind scatters the ash settled over the garden. Fires crackle beyond the temple walls. Wood groans against wood, and a tremendous crash shakes the ground. Something collapsing in the street. Distantly, more roars of buildings falling. The raised gallery along the sides of the garden whines a short note of displeasure. I'm alone in the yard with the corpse. I pull the knife from his chest. Blood seeps from the wound. I wipe the blade in the dry grass and set it back in the sheath at his hip. His cloak slips off my shoulders as I lean to take the necklace from him, and the long, thin iron chain passes over my head easily. I pause to look in his face. His eyes are still kind. I still believe him. I do not know him, but I believe him, even in death, especially in death. He said something as he died. His voice keeps ringing in my head, but the sounds all rattle together and refuse to shape into words. I need to find other clothes in his pack. I need to find answers. I need to know what to ask. He said something as he died. Everything softly jingles together until I realize the sound is coming from the charms on the necklace bumping against each other from my fidgeting. His blood heats my hands. I scrub my hands with grass and dirt and the thin layer of ash covering everything until they feel like hands again. A bruise by my left thumb unfolds with color. The bright heat of pain that blooms when I press it draws me further into myself. I breathe deep, but the haze of smoke makes me cough. I retie his cloak around my shoulders. The buckles on his pack fight me. Years seemed to pass before I drag them apart. He said something as he died. Sound in the distance raises my hackles, horse hooves over uneven ground, stones clattering with each step, one horse moving slowly closer with one set of footsteps, slowing further and by the break in the garden wall. I rise on my knees to see. An enormous man with a sword at his hip steps through the cleft wall, guiding his horse after him. For a moment, they both stand so still they do not seem real. Then the man calls out and rushes forward. I run back toward the surrounding gallery. I trip over a mound of bricks, nearly smashing my face into it, bolt up the stairs, and crouch below the gallery wall. He must have seen where I ran. The gallery isn't very high. From the size of him, he could easily reach over the dwarf wall and lift me out. I've been here before, not here, but a moment like this one. Struggling to catch my breath, heart pounding in my throat, the soot suspended like snow in the air. The distant crackle of fire, the smell of what it's burned. I know in the root of my spine the world is unwell and I have never been so alone. The creaking gallery is my only warning before stone shingles smash to the ground at my feet. I dive away into the opening at the stairs. The swordsman shouts again. I run the other way through the gallery and he is fast behind me. He stumbles over the rocks and stops just as suddenly. I stay ducked below the wall and watch the stairs I came from in the stretching silence. Then it suddenly snaps. He vaults the wall behind me and lands hard. He stands with a wince, his leg not taking his weight right away. I scramble backwards onto my feet. The gallery shudders as he draws his sword. Those do not belong to you. He steps closer. He wasn't using them. I step back. He's even taller than I realized, my head barely reaching his chest. He was my friend. I will have what was his. The sword sways in his hand, but his grip is strong enough. I pull the necklace off and with it tear several strands of hair caught between the charms and the chain. His leg jerks unsteadily as he steps closer to take the necklace. The pant leg darkens with blood. Each thigh is the size of my torso. He tucks the necklace inside his tunic without looking away. Again, he extends his hand. I let out the knot from the wool cloak and hold it out towards him. His hand drops as he looks me over, fully naked. A drip of sweat prickles down my stomach and leaves another streak in the layers of ash. There are bands of dust and soot across the cloak. The hardness in his face gives way to suspicious concern. Have you no clothes of your own? Do you always ask such foolish questions? His eyes narrow. I push the cloak out further. He sheathes his sword with some grumbling, finally looking away. Keep it, and come with me.
Hi, I'm Dale, and tonight I'm reading the first chapter of my novel, Awakened. There was no solid proof, only a statement she couldn't remember making. Clearing her throat, she slid the binder across the glass conference table, the smooth surface a barrier between her and the suits and ties on the other side. I'm not signing this, she said. Her voice was laced with a mixture of confidence and entitlement, not without my own legal representation present. Gold-laced, ruthless lawyers didn't flinch. Why would they? She didn't have a case. But that wasn't going to stop her from saving her reputation. If I were you, Miss Kay, I'd accept the offer, said the chubby lawyer nearest her, tapping his Mont-Blanc roll-ball pen against the table. You'll walk out of here compensated with no legal action against you. A breathy huff escapes her lips. I've read the terms, and as I understand them, this is a payoff. Goldlight would own everything I've built. No, keep the money. Eon stays with me. The serum she invented was her promise that now felt like a curse. Every particle of it carried the weight of her genius outside of the K family name. Her parents, Diane and Easton, had received honors ranging from the Thomas Hunt Morgan Medal to the Nobel Prize. The other lawyer, the one with perfect posture, dark-framed glasses, and an emotionless face, slid the documents back toward her, his fingertips never leaving the binder. 20 to 25 years in prison. She needed to solve. Pardon me. That's how much time you'll serve for the death of your grandmother. His unbothered tone didn't change. Tack on an additional 7, and if we decide to press charges for theft, data, and property misuse. He paused. Not to mention the video will be used in court. Extending his sleek fountain pen, he added, "This is a favor to your parents, Miss Kay, one that expires within the next 10 minutes. His bluntness warmed Parker's flesh. Redness was probably spreading across her mahogany cheeks. It could even be mistaken for blush. She slowed her breathing. She needed them to see someone besides the woman in that video. Please, she said smoothly, take 5 of those minutes to discuss naming me as the founding contributor of Eon. If she couldn't take Eon with her, she'd at least take the credit. Like bitter exes fighting for custody of a child only one cared for, she and the lawyer locked eyes. Her thumb found the obsidian ring in the center of her finger, a gift from her grandmother. The lawyer wasn't backing down. The lawyer wasn't backing down, nor was she until she felt it. A pulse from the stone, the subtle pricking beneath her skin, 1,000 invisible needles pressing, warning. It was happening again. Parker blinked it away, willing it away. The student men before her looked different now, stripped of pretense, reduced to their essential signatures, their skeletons flicked beneath her skin, surrounded by colored lights translucent like fog. The colors bled into one another, red, pale blue, gray, and the faintest trace of gold. Every muscle in her body stiffened, the tapping pen thinned, her peripheral vision fractured like a kaleidoscope. Their energy, her sister Suzette would say, their truth. Suzette was the only person she had told about this ability. The well-postured attorney glowed a dull silver, an aura so faint it was nearly colorless. Looking at him was like watching a silent film. "We provided your options," he said. Parker closed her eyes, but their auras remained. Her toes flecked inside of her pointy heels, her palms pressed against her thighs. Suzette's morning mantra played in her head. Breathe through the body, not the mind. Let the world dim until you find yourself again. With an exhale, Parker said, "I need the room." "Miss Kay," the well-postured lawyer began, his voice a blade slicing through her audacity. But Grady interrupted. There was a green aura around him. "Let's give her a moment."
Hello, my name is Jessica Short, and I'm going to be reading the intro to my young adult fiction novel. Underneath the cover of Birch and Walnut, Hale can't tell whether the trees sing or cry in Welcome to the Longer Days of Sun. Normally so quiet, the deciduous woods rustle and curl as Hale stares towards the canopies above. She lays in the thin grass, her head blanketed by locks of her coppery hair. Leaves blow, branches wave, and trunks groan. They are quite loud today, but there's no occasion Hale can think of to cause such a commotion. What a world it would be if the trees could speak in words. But that would be too easy, wouldn't it? As Hale draws in a deep breath, her eyes flutter shut. She stretches out, her fingers curling in the grass. It's hard enough drowning out the trees when there's no white noise or music playing. They're always there. A whisper on her way to school, a rustle to welcome her home, a shiver when something is amiss. She's grown so used to the company of the trees that any quiet is disconcerting now. It's calming, really. Tranquil. It's the chatter of others she really worries about. A shadow falls over her, and Hale opens an eye. Above her, looking down through wild, dark curls, stands a girl her age. "What are you doing?" the girl asks, her voice hushing the sounds in the trees. "Kala," Hale breathes, her name a prayer on her lips. "Why are you dressed up?" Kala's heart-shaped face is framed by jeweled, toned sable skin and barely visible freckles, but as her large, coppery eyes widen and her cool-toned cheeks warm with blush, the soft freckles of color on her face become even clearer. A purple and silver blouse, matched with black leggings, hug her curves while bracelets of paper flowers twist idly around her wrists. A few even tangle in the wild, dangerous curls of her hair. Kala raises her hand to stifle a giggle. "Have you forgotten what today is?" Hale's eyes graze over Kala's face, her form silhouetted by a halo of golden light spilling past the canopies above. "Sunday?" she asks. But Kala laughs again, one of her brows lifting in mock disbelief. "Lacrosse practice?" She shakes her head. With a scowl, Hale sits up, the world twisting upright in a blur as she focuses solely on Kala. Shit, did I miss a tutoring session? As Kala shakes her head once more, Hale's shoulders deflate. "You really don't remember?" Kala reaches for her, her warm, slender fingers pressing to the inside of Hale's wrists. As she yanks Hale to her feet, A hush falls over the trees in the clearing, as if the wind itself is compelled to freeze. It's the first day of spring. Hale's breath leaves her in a rush as she laughs, the sound reinvigorating the forest until the trees begin their songs again. She shakes her head, looking down at the unkept wild grass, but never pulling away from Cala's lingering touch. How could she have forgotten a day like today? The spring equinox has always been an important day for them. Hell, for their entire town. As obsessed with the first day of spring as it is for the first days of summer, fall, and winter. Luckily, today it landed on a Sunday. Calla tugs at Hale's wrists. Come on, let's go. As she smiles, the light bounces off her two straight teeth and tangles in their hair-like ribbons of firelight. Go where? Hale asks, letting Calla drag her from the clearing. Have you forgotten that too? She asks, but Hale hasn't. Maybe all she wants to do is hear Calla's voice, more as beautiful as a chime of silver bells. The Warwick Spring Festival, a gathering of everyone in their little town, from those who've lived there for decades to the new families budding with their young children, brings Main Street to heel in ribbons of pastel colors and the sweet floral scent of hyacinths. It's exciting and free, not tinged with the acidic burn of car exhaust or clogs of cigarette smoke, but of the tanginess of caramelized sugar over citrus and the clean, yeasty warmth of glazed pastries. Calla skips on ahead, her sights clearly set on the grass field at the end of the street. But Hale? No, she takes her time, passing the busy shops under the shadow of the morning sun. First, she walks past the cute mom-and-pop used bookstore on the corner, its bay window painted with a fresh mural to celebrate the first day of spring. The flowers are composed of pastel tints, surrounded by books taken to the air on mourning dove wings, followed by a childlike rendition of the hairless cat Chaz, the shop's mascot sitting upon his throne of hardcovers. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Nivitha Sriram, and I'll be reading the first few pages of Samatapuna, or Good Girl, a personal essay from my nonfiction thesis, A Never-Ending Inquiry. Summer months as a child meant time spent in Chennai, India, where my family is from. Without a doubt, nearly every June, after school was finished for the academic year, my Amma and I flew on Singapore Airlines to Chennai. Every year, I was smiling from ear to ear as we boarded each of the 3 flights to make our way back home. I would binge watch movies knowing that my Amma couldn't stop me, falling asleep across her lap to be woken up by airplane food. Yuck, I thought to myself, making displeased faces back at my Amma. Sabda Kannama, she would say while laughing. Eat, dear apple of my eye. Kannama, one of my favorite Tamil words, even now. I can never stay irritable once my Amma utters these words, knowing that if I listen to her, everything will be okay. June through August, at the age where my feet still dangled over the airplane seat, meant being spoiled rotten by my family. I knew in their eyes I could do no wrong, and I reveled in it. These gleefully carefree months meant my cousin and I were free to do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. Shopping sprees were affectionately funded by my maternal grandfather, never saying no to anything I set my eyes on. My grandmothers would often slip me rupee bills, thinking that my Amma wouldn't notice. Of course she did, and with a slight smirk, giving me confidence that the money was mine to spend or save however I was pleased. For years, I saved the rupee bills my grandparents gave me, tucked away in a silver coach wallet gifted to me by my maternal grandfather as something to touch after they were gone. Summer months meant going to the movie theater as an entire family, my grandparents, parents, uncles, aunts, cousins, all in tow, to go watch the latest Tamil film. It meant attempting to whistle along with the teenage boys in the theater when their favorite actor or actress appeared on screen, something seen as normal in India. The escapism, the adoration for celebrities, giving everyone a few hours of respite from the day-to-day grind enthralled me. I never found Hollywood movies intriguing. I still don't. Summer meant family members, store associate, auto rickshaw drivers being surprised that I understood Tamil as fluently as I understand English, speaking more easily as the trips went on and my confidence in my mother tongue increased. It meant family telling my parents and me to move back home as if America wasn't home. To them, Chennai was our home, not the one my parents had built over the years. It meant being told I don't seem American because of my adjusting behavior. It meant hearing that I'm a Samattapunu, a good girl, over and over and over again, until even younger me recognized that this might not be the highest of compliments. I never thought of myself as a people pleaser, but in some ways, perhaps I was, always trying to create a good impression of being born and raised in America to some of my Western-averse family members. When visiting my dad's side of the family, I wore, and still continue to wear, more modest clothing. Arms mostly covered, legs definitely covered after I became a preteen. My hair was always braided or tied, as my grandmother was of the generation of women who viewed women with loose hair as someone who was loose, without morals, without self-respect, without dignity. All I knew was that my grandmother liked a long braid with jasmine flowers clipped to the middle of it, like a good South Indian girl, a Samattaponu. So long braid, flowers, and a bindi, and Indian clothes it was. I answered all the questions I was asked, a little timidly, as I constantly felt under the scrutiny of aunts and uncles who felt it was necessary to point out how different I was because my parents raised me in the States. Are there Indians in your school? What food do you take to school? What classes are you taking? Do you like it here or there better? Do you wear Indian clothes to school? Americans are lazy, aren't they? And once I got older, the questions shifted. Americans get divorced a lot, don't they? I learned to answer truthfully but diplomatically, in a way that would rarely ever offend the relatives interviewing me, as I sat awkwardly on a couch hoping the conversation would end. My amma would give me fresh mango or Indian snacks in between. A maid would set a tray of coffee down on the living room coffee table, looking at my amma and me. Yes, but mostly white kids, I responded to their questions. Sandwiches, noodles, pasta, fruit. Anything easy. And for dinner, our home-cooked Indian food. Science, English, math, PE. I like both. How could I choose? No, no one wears Indian clothes to school. Why would I? I don't think Americans are lazy. There are lazy people everywhere, right? As I grew older with more knowledge about marriages around the world, my responses shifted. I don't know if they get divorced a lot. I don't think the stigma around divorce is there anymore. I don't know if divorce rates are increasing or women are recognizing abuse and no longer wanting to be a victim as something they can leave if they have the ability to do so. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Herrera, and I'll be reading an excerpt from a middle chapter of my novel, Urban Follies, about four artists living together in Brooklyn, New York. In this scene, a novice photographer, Maria, has been entering photography competitions around the city without much success. The gallery space was minuscule, though the room was arranged well enough so that people could move freely without standing on top of one another. The light blasting from the ceiling was harsh and sterile. Maria squinted while her eyes adjusted, wishing that gallery organizers paid as much attention to aesthetics as they expected of their photographers. As had now become a habit at these galleries, Maria grabbed a tequila soda and took her place in the far corner. To her, the photographs in this showcase were more of the same. Seaside landscapes, nude portraits, wannabe magazine covers. When was she going to see something exciting? But in the opposite corner of the gallery, she saw a series of pictures that caught her eye, and she moved closer to get a better look. An arrangement of 6 large prints, half oriented in portrait and half in landscape, hung in gold-tinted frames. They captured scenes of activity across Manhattan, but there was something distinct in how the photographer used lines to portray movement. In the center frame, entitled Urbia, lines of motion were everywhere. The axis of street signs, the rigid outlines of windows and box buildings, contrails following a plane as it dove across the sky. To have arranged all of those elements in a single shot, to highlight the geometry of the city in a way that created motion out of something static, was undeniably impressive. Well, if she was going to lose, she might as well lose to art like this. Throughout the evening, her eyes kept wandering back to the geometry collection. An hour passed, and Maria was starting to feel dizzy from the tequila. The showcase was due to close in 30 minutes, so she found a bathroom and steadied herself. When she returned, a crowd had congregated around a few speakers in the center of the gallery. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to say thank you for coming to our first ever showcase for the Gowanus Arts Club, a nasally male voice said over a mic. The voice continued by saying that the club would be awarding cash prizes to the top 3 entries as voted on by the judging panel. In third place, please give a hearty congratulations to Cecily Moran for her collection, Spices of Life. Tepid applause broke out as a dark-skinned woman with frizzy hair and thick spectacles marched over to the speaker. Maria could finally see that the main voice belonged to a short, plump man wearing a yarmulke. He held up one of Cecily's sepia-toned photographs of an elderly woman's hands kneading dough. The two exchanged inaudible words and some laughter as Cecily faced the crowd, blushing awkwardly. After Cecily, the speaker summoned up the second place contestant, a slender, handsome blond man who looked like he should be the subject of the camera rather than behind it. He stood next to a photograph of a female model that looked like it was copied from Vogue. The crowd awarded him with more energetic applause. Well, of course he's getting recognized, Maria thought. He's a model, for Christ's sake. He already has an advantage here. By the time the speaker moved on to the first place contestant, Maria had already summoned an Uber. The car was 10 minutes away, and she could not wait to be in the comfort of her own space again. She was about to exit the gallery when she saw the speaker hold up a photograph she recognized, Urbia from the geometry series. For first place, we are honored to announce that this was a unanimous decision by the judging panel. For her impressive photo series, Urban Kinematics, Gowanus Arts Club is proud to award the grand prize to Cassidy Albona. Fervent applause for a few seconds. Then it dissolved into silence as the audience looked around the room. Maria joined them, maneuvering her body to see through the crowd in front of her as she sought a glance of Cassidy. The speaker cleared his throat. One more time for Cassidy Albona. A few claps. No one stepped forward. There were murmurs among the crowd. Last call. Has anyone seen a Cassidy Albona? She's the first place winner for tonight's showcase. Maria took a step forward. Here, I'm here. Her eyes widened in fear as she recognized the voice as her own. The people around her all turned to face her. Within seconds, her body made its way to the front next to the speaker. You're Cassidy Albona? Yes, Maria said. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up one more time for tonight's winner, Cassidy. The crowd erupted into roaring applause and even a few hollers. All eyes were fixated on her, certifying her as the champion of the evening. Some people exchanged a few whispers as their eyes darted between Maria and Urbia. The approval on their faces was glorious. She wanted nothing more than to bottle it up and drink it all. This was her moment. She deserved this. Any final words for the audience tonight? The speaker asked. Wow, thank you all, Maria said. This feels right. Never stop believing in yourself. If I can do it, you can too. Thank you.
My name is Maura Lamonaco. I will be reading excerpts from Threads and Echoes, a personal essay in my mostly nonfiction thesis, Unquiet, Echoes of Power. The essay follows the melodic lines of my life through the t-shirts I've saved and had made into a quilt, a souvenir of moments that shaped my story and my identity. Newsday Marching Band Festival, Long Island, New York, October 1991. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the Ward Melville High School Marching Band from the Three Village School District in East Setauket. 240 musicians make up the ensemble this year, under music director Gary Hodges and drum majors Maura Lamonaco, Claire Cusack, and Bevan Tiger. I took my position on the side of the football field at the 50-yard line, with Claire on my right and Bevan on my left. As the band fanned out into their starting positions on the field, I took a deep breath, soaking in the energy of the moment and holding it in, before releasing it into a cloud that drifted up and out toward the field in front of me and the starry sky above. I got the nod from Mr. Hodges, put both hands on the railings of the steel ladder in front of me, and climbed to the podium platform 6 feet above the ground, making eye contact with my boyfriend JT on the field with his alto sax. He smiled and gave me a thumbs up. I checked to make sure I had everyone's eyes, section leads on the field and the marimba and xylophone players below me. I lifted my hands, looked in my peripheral vision, and gave a big nod as I took my big breath in and started to make large, slow triangles in front of my body, spanning from the crown of my head and out and down to the outside of my hips, and then in toward the middle before repeating for the dramatic, slow, 6/8 time intro of Batman. The band stood still, trumpets, trombones, flutes, clarinets projecting into the stands filled with crowds behind me, until the break when I picked up speed and they started marching in formation. Now I made a triangle and a vertical line, repeating it for this 5/8 section. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, ba 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 dum, ba 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 dum. The drum major uniform had white pants and a jacket with green epaulettes and gold threaded trim. The band members wore green pants and had to wear a tall bucket hat with a fluffy gold orange feather on top, but when I conducted, I got to remove mine and wear my long brown hair in a braid. I didn't get to carry a long mace, though, like you see in movies. Maybe it's an insurance thing. We sold crates of oranges and grapefruits to friends and family for years to raise the money for these new uniforms. We nailed the performance, and I marched with the band off the back of the field, unzipping my jacket to cool off and relax, my too high pants looking ridiculous without the jacket. Underneath, I wore a gray Heather t-shirt with the green Ward Melville logo on the front. Appalachian Trail near the Maryland-Pennsylvania border, fall 1993. In college, I tried to leave my sheltered suburban childhood behind me as I struggled with a lack of direction. I drank vodka and Crystal Light lemonade in water bottles at lacrosse games. I took a work-study job at WJHU, Baltimore's public radio station, taking the city bus there a few afternoons a week. My friends and I went to Orioles games at the newly opened Camden Yards, and we ate bibimbap at Korean restaurants, swirling the egg yolk into the rice with our chopsticks like pros. Sophomore year, I committed even more to the college experience. I signed up for a weekend trip with the Johns Hopkins Outdoors Club to hike part of the Appalachian Trail. I didn't know anyone in the club and couldn't convince any friends to go with me, but I borrowed my roommate Emily's Gore-Tex hiking boots and geared up for the adventure. On Friday afternoon, the van was parked behind the lacrosse field, and as I was loading up my gear, I found out that all the other girls had backed out, leaving me as the only one going on this hike with 7 college guys. I was so shocked it didn't even occur to me to just not get in the van. On the road, one of the guys popped a cassette into the dashboard player. I made a killer mixtape for the drive, and we sang along. Into the gray, wide open, under them skies of blue, out in the great wide open, a rebel without a clue. The trees on the trail glowed in bright shades of autumn. I discovered that I had exercise-induced asthma on the initial 2-mile rocky incline, but we managed to complete a 3-day hike in 2, and I learned how to pee in the woods without another girl showing me the ropes. The second night, we actually tried to camp at the trailhead before driving back, but the park police came in with flashlights and kicked us out. So the boys and I headed back to Baltimore early. I hiked, I got the t-shirt, and I had great material for my first professionally produced piece of journalism a few years later on Discovery Channel Online. I called it Snow White on the Appalachian Trail. Hi-ho, it's in the woods I go. Coda, Huntington, New York. May 10th, 2022. My daughter Ella is turning 7 tomorrow, and I'm rocking in the teal lazy boy chair we originally bought for her nursery. Now it's mostly a repository for piles of clean laundry. My t-shirt memory quilt hangs over the back of it, so I can cozy up with it when I read or write. I still wear a lot of t-shirts, although these days they tend to feature feminist or inspirational slogans. A favorite is a Serena Williams Nike tee that reads, "Unstoppable Queen" in large gold letters. A few weeks ago, my parents dropped off boxes of school books and a black garbage bag full of old clothes they found in the garage of our childhood home. In the bag, about 50 more t-shirts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our thesis readers. That was an amazing evening of storytelling, and thank you to everybody who came to listen to our readers and to cheer them on. Have a good rest of your evening.